I'm afraid I'm going to go back to those 70s classic art movies here with this. And I was thinking about that very provocative question, why is it that I'm doing a paper on Herzog, and why is it that I have chosen someone here for this particular paper that Deleuze himself does mention in connection with the crystal image, although he doesn't say that much about him really. I think the reason why Deleuze chooses who he does is basically that he prefers those filmmakers who are themselves philosophers in some sense. In other words, he's choosing those filmmakers who write about film in a theoretical way and who analyse their own aesthetic work in a way which can be described as philosophy. So I'd like to begin here with a comment from Werner Herzog himself, and then a couple of comments from Deleuze, not comments but images, pieces, beautiful creative words. And I think this is again one of the excitements of Deleuze for me, the creative affect of Deleuze's own writing. He is an artist, the way he writes his poetry. So, Herzog said that film is not analysis, it is the agitation of the mind. Okay, and Deleuze, talking about Heart of Glass, talks about the search for the alchemical heart and secret, for the red crystal is inseparable from the search for cosmic limits. And then, finally, connecting Deleuze and Herzog, as we'll see, Deleuze says, it is hypnosis that reveals thought to itself. Okay, Werner Herzog literally wanted to entrance the audience of Heart of Glass, which came out in 1977. The director planned to appear in a prologue and to make hypnotic passes that would induce trance, then reappear at the end of the film to bring viewers back to waking consciousness. Rejecting this eventually as unethical, he limited the actual induction of hypnotism to the actors. Even without his literally hypnotic prologue, I will argue that the affective aesthetics of Herzog's film and their manipulation of the viewer's sensory and mental engagement can also produce a lasting shift of consciousness. The somnambulistic movements and glassy stares of the actors, who all performed under hypnosis apart from Hayat, who's the central character, the herdsman, intensify disorientation. With its long-held shots of clouds and swirling soft-focus mist, as well as the unnerving quality of the acting, the film induces a trance-like state in the audience that suspends our linear sense of time and opens up to duration. In cinema too, Deleuze extends Bergson's distinction of linear time, chronos, and duration, aeon, to the cinematic process. Deleuze's application helps us to think time via our sensory responses. The time image is pivotal to cinema's philosophical resonance. Via framing, lighting, and temporal overlay, film can induce a metaphysical experience of time. Deleuze locates the time image in the philosophical and poetic styles of post-war cinema. In film viewing, he argues, consensual time and space are modified as our customary perception of them becomes fluid. Non-linear time and spatial distortion can undermine the viewer's conventional thought patterns. This paper works with Heart of Glass as a specific type of time image, the crystal image, in relation to the altered states of cinematic time. I want to find out why Deleuze, whose references to Heart of Glass are tantalisingly brief, claims that this film has the greatest crystal images in the history of cinema. I contextualise my discussion by outlining Deleuze's Bergsonian concept of the crystal image, then move on to interweave Herzog's film aesthetics and Deleuzean theory. And I do apologise to those people who already know what crystal image is within the time image. That might be helpful for those people who are perhaps newer Deleuzians. Deleuze's crystal image is rooted in Bergson's model from matter and memory, which maps the dynamics of memory and duration. The present is the point of the cone, as we saw, as it penetrates the future. As a mixture of past and future, this present moment that passes even as we try to grasp it can never be purely present. Already it is becoming past as it makes way for a new present. For both Bergson and Deleuze, the past does not follow the present that it is no longer. It coexists with the present it was. Like a mirror reflection and its material stimulus, the present moment has two sides contemporaneously, its actual physical extension and its virtual side that is already part of duration. Bergson cites paramnesia and déjà vu to exemplify the coexistence of past and present. The process of remembering seeks to actualize the vertical via a recollection image. In order to find it, memory searches through ever wider circuits of duration made up of layers of the past that move further and further away from the present. When this image surfaces into consciousness, it has two sides, actual and virtual. Like a mirror image, these two sides coalesce. For Deleuze, the real object is reflected in a mirror image as in the virtual object, which from its side and simultaneously envelops the real. Crystalline structures, by nature double, are consolidates of actual and virtual. They are an objective correlative of what Deleuze calls the indiscernibility of the real and the imaginary, or of the present and the past, of the actual and the virtual. For Deleuze, such indiscernibility is not an imaginary mental projection, but an inherent property of crystalline substances. One thing I love about Deleuze's philosophy is his emphasis on immanence. They are and aren't real. The actual is concrete, it's graspable by the senses, but at the same time, it's like the tip of an iceberg projecting back into the virtual. They are one. And it's this idea of philosophy on the nerve endings, thinking on the nerve endings, in the body, through the body, is a very inspiring aspect of Deleuze's philosophy. Deleuze uses Bergson's cone to gain insight into what he calls op signs, visual techniques, and son signs, sound techniques, of the cinematic time image. He argues that such images, when cut off from their motor extensions, form large circuits and enter into communication with what could appear as recollection images, dream images, and world images. The key, or to use Herzog's own image as Deleuze does, the heart of the op sign, forms a peak or point on the smallest internal circuit as its true genetic element, the crystal image. This is manifest when the actual optical image crystallizes with its own virtual image, and the larger circuits of op sign compositions are, to continue the mirror figure, nothing other than slivers of crystal images. In the crystal image, the actual and virtual remain distinct. However small the circuit, it retains discernible elements of each that undergo a process of continual exchange of their relative characteristics. When the virtual is actualized, he says it becomes visible and limpid, as in the mirror or the solidity of finished crystal. But the actual image becomes virtual in its turn, referred elsewhere, invisible, opaque, shadowy, like a crystal barely dislodged from the earth. What Deleuze calls the crystalline circuit, then, involves three figures: the actual and the virtual, or the two mirrors face to face, the limpid and the opaque, the seed and the environment. Both Deleuze and Bergson use the continuum of actual and virtual as a philosophical tool to explore the nature of time and our perception of it. Cinematic expression operates a crystal circuitry in the time image. The seed is the virtual image that causes an amorphous environment to crystallize. But the virtual environment also needs a structural potential to become crystalline. Deleuze's chief example here is the shattered glass snowstorm from Citizen Kane. When the crystal breaks, we have a close-up of the gusts of snow that seem to come toward us. Deleuze writes to impregnate the environment that we will discover. We do not know in advance if the actual environment enjoys the corresponding virtuality. The next shot in the film is of Kane as a boy playing in real snow, a recollection image that duration has opened up, perhaps as a consolation to the dying man. Deleuze also speculates whether this figure of the crystalline circuit helps us to understand the splendour of the images in Herzog's Heart of Glass and the film's double aspect, to which I return later. Like Deleuze, Herzog asserts the power of cinema to produce a special kind of mental experience. For the director, film is not analysis, it is the agitation of the mind, as I said at the beginning. I will now identify some techniques used in the opening sequence of Heart of Glass to express time, to alter the mental templates of spectators, and to engage them in the role of seer as the brain and the screen become one. The film deploys trance-induction techniques from the outset. The ground of the titles is a long shot that could almost be a still. Apart from the almost imperceptible shifts of cattle feeding in a misty landscape, a static human figure is seated with his back to the camera. In this film, close-ups which might have produced an unwanted identification effect are replaced by mid or long shots that block this empathic process and distance us emotionally from the characters. This enables us to engage more directly in the meditative mode ourselves. Yet we need to reconsider the concept of self when considering the time image. Neither Deleuze nor Bergson works with psychological subjectivity. According to Deleuze, for Bergson, the only subjectivity is time, non-chronological time grasped in its foundation, and it is we who are internal to time, not the other way round. For both, consciousness is time. The temporal dynamics of art offer insight into the operation of the embodied mind as a centre of indetermination, amid time images in perpetual motion. And of course the brain itself is a time image in perpetual motion and perceptual motion. When the man finally faces the camera in medium shot, his gaze is unfocused. Hayat, the Bavarian herdsman, is a seer who contemplates duration. Duration has chosen Hayat as its medium because of his own crystalline quality of transparency, later characterised as his heart of glass. Elsewhere, Deleuze describes characters trapped in the disjointed world of the time image as pure seers caught in certain pure optical and sound situations. Seers no longer exist except in the interval of the moment, and do not even have the consolation of the sublime, which would connect them to matter or gain control of the spirit for them. They are rather given over to something intolerable. Like Bergson and Deleuze, Hayat gazes into the intolerable depths of time's abyss. Dramatic action is suspended, and the viewer is likewise compelled to watch and to wait in this entrancingly slow opening take that sets the pace for the rest of the film. Time itself informs the contents of the herdsman's visions, and the director sets out to produce a similarly slow motion experience of time for the spectator. Time lies heavy, insistently present in each shot, and forces us into consciousness of its unfolding in ourselves. Hayat is no longer present as an intermediary in the following shots. Rather, the object of his gaze is directly revealed to us in images of natural forces, accompanied by the elevating music of Wagnerian-style horns. A vast sky is bordered only by the edges of the frame, and a low, mist-swathed row of pines. Fast-motion time-lapse cinematography speeds up the swirling of the fog above the river. It makes it flow as the river's own pace, as the gaseous element adopts aqueous characteristics. This technique overtly displays the camera's ability to play with time. These shots make their own time by forcing the pace of nature into technological motion. The film so far has been non-verbal, but at this point, Hayat's voiceover begins his apocalyptic commentary, with images of avalanche and the lava-like bubbling of a sea of mud. His back remains turned to maintain the impersonal qualities of his prophecies that far exceed personal history. He pronounces that first time will tumble and then the earth. It is not only the avalanche and the earth itself that tumbles, falls, crumbles and collapses, but the rational everyday consciousness of the hypnotized spectator.
Erst kommt die Zeit, stürzen und dann die Erde. Wolken kommen ins Rasen. Vollkocht die Erde, das ist das Zeichen. Das ist der Anfang vom Ende. Der Rand der Welt fängt an zu stürzen, alles fängt an zu stürzen. Stürzt nieder und fällt und stürzt und stürzt. Die Scheuner stürzen hinein. Die spüren einen Sog. Es zieht mich, es saugt mich hinunter. Ich beginne zu stürzen. Ich stürze, ich schwinge vom Stürzen. Das versunkene Atlantis taucht die Erde aus dem Wasser empor. Ich sehe eine neue Erde.
Herzog's intended experiment with hypnotic passes might have produced interesting responses, but his cinematic equivalent in Heart of Glass has an entrancing force of its own. Herzog's hypnotic cinematography uniquely expresses the opaque virtual world and the limpid sharpness of actualization as distinct but contiguous processes of time and our human perception of it. In the final shot of the film, seabirds blur into invisibility as they fly faster than either the film speed or the moving camera can follow. We also lose sight of the tiny boat swallowed up by the ocean swell, as Herzog signals the limit of what film technology can express. Like Deleuze, he insists that his intended agitation of the mind should not be limited to the virtual world of the screen, but can be actualized in the spectator.